Evening. This is the Aspen City Council regular meeting for August 9th, 2022. That is a call to order. Can we have a roll call for attendance, please?
Councillor Doyle.
Here.
Councillor Hallenstein.
Here.
Councillor Mesereau.
Present.
Councillor Richards. Here. Mayor Tory.
Here. This evening, we have no real scheduled appearances, but we'll have some comments in just a minute. So this is an opportunity for citizen comments and petitions. Are there any members of the public that are in room with us tonight that wish to make comment this evening? In the front row. Yes, come on up to the table.
My name is Pat. I'm a longtime local and I own a small business. And I'm here again because of the Living Lab. And you made an amendment and you put those, I don't know what they're called, green and white cones, obstacles, whatever you want to call it. Huge hazard. I see people tripping over them. Women with strollers, it's a handicap. I can't even imagine what happens at night when people don't even see them. And also, I'm afraid what's going to happen when older people get out of the car and trip over those. And also visually, it's just getting worse. It's getting worse. We have a yellow lane, we have a white lane, and we have posts over here. And this is what's cut off, and this is you're not supposed to go there. And now we're having green obstacles in there, green and white. It just makes me sad. The visual is just horrible, horrible. And so then the other thing, I'm just saying it again, is this is not what the citizens want. You claim that you did this in conjunction with the core, downtown core businesses. You did not. You maybe have contacted last year a handful of people. They all opposed it. But you went ahead and did it anyway. And you say you listen to us, but I don't think you are, because I'm not sure, I thought I read in a paper last year that when the trial is over end of September, you're not going to go back to parallel parking. You're going to keep it, angle parking, you're going to keep it parallel parking. Is that correct?
No, that's not quite correct.
Oh, because I didn't know if I read this right or not. But it's like, it's just there's so many, I talk to so many people and they're all against it, or the majority of it. People come in stores, they're first-timers, second homeowners, they're all frustrated and they let it out on the employees. And they're all frustrated, or they circle around for half an hour and then they leave. They just leave. And it just makes me sad. It just makes me sad. And the majority of citizens are against it. And those are the citizens that voted you into office. Including myself, I voted for several of you. And I don't know, it seems like you're not listening what we want, and you're supposed to represent us. It just makes me sad. It just makes me sad. It's like, what happened to democracy? This is not working. It's not working. And most of all, visually, it's not good. And I am like, I don't know why this is still going on. You want to keep your trial going, but I hope this goes back, because I know I talk to long-time locals who bicycle to work. They don't bicycle anymore because they're afraid of people not knowing where they're going. And there's double parking, triple parking, and I don't know who's supposed to monitor that or educate people about it, but there's nobody there. I never see anybody who's there like, okay, no double parking, triple parking, and whatever. It's just mayhem in the core. And people still don't understand it. So I'm begging you, please stop it. Stop it. We're all frustrated. Unfortunately, not that many people come here, but I hear it on a daily basis. How this, and now with the green cones, I mean, Jesus. It looks like a bad gone go-kart course. It's really bad. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Seth Chan. I'm also a local resident. I don't want to reiterate, and I don't know any of you personally with the exception of Ward. But this is like, it feels like a corporation launched a really awful product to a target demographic, and I do not own a business in town. But I've lived here 30 years. I talk to a fair number of people every day. And the product was rejected aggressively by the target demographic. And the company said, oh, no, you don't get it. No, we actually do get it. And I think perhaps it's this group that does not get it. And and you can sit and nod, but I can't think of a single person that has sort of welcomed this warmly. Okay?
I'm nodding because I share some of your sentiments.
Okay. And the other thing I would love to know, and I will tell you, this is the first meeting of this kind that I've ever attended in the 30 years. I've never really felt the need to. But I'm very curious as to the comparables that you used to come up with this. So I'm assuming that you've identified some resorts in the United States that adopted this plan and had overwhelming success. And I'd love to see that data. Is that data available publicly?
If you want to leave your email, I'll be glad to get any information I can to you.
Can you tell me what resorts you used basically as comparables?
I'll be glad to get with you through email and give you all the information you want.
Okay, I'll leave that with you after. The other thing is the communication from the city, or maybe certain members of the city staff, needs to be improved. So if I pick up the phone one time in a 30-year span, and I call the city manager's office, it is not unreasonable for me to expect, in a town of less than 8,000 people, I call once every 30 years, to have a return phone call. Now, I did speak to two of Sarah Ott's lovely assistants. And on the fourth time, and in all seriousness, they were quite pleasant and professional on the phone. On the fourth time, when she hadn't called me back, I said, I'm going to call you if I don't have a call back in 24 hours. I'm going to call you every hour, on the hour. I shouldn't have to do that. That's poor responsiveness, okay? Particularly when you have a serially accused violent offender who the city managed to work with to build a museum that nobody wanted. If you can do that, you can return my phone call. Is that fair?
Thank you. Sarah?
Good evening, everyone, everywhere. I'm Sarah Platt. I can't sit. I have a sprained right knee. Thank you for being here this evening. It is a new issue, but it is in light of another attempt to develop the only John Denver sanctuary in the United States or in North America. So I've come here on a new request and recommend that the residents of Aspen, Colorado, put the land there into an independent perpetual trust, like we did right here in Aspen for Walden Pond. Don Henley and I and others did that with the Thoreau Society. We were successful, and I think we can do it here with the John Denver Sanctuary. So I'm going to time myself tonight. I know I only get 3 minutes. It's only running a little over, but I've lived here 45 years on the edge of that park. You fill up my senses like a night in the forest. like the mountains in springtime, like a walk in the rain, like a storm in the desert, like a sleepy blue ocean. Come, let me love you. Come, fill me again. I worked with John for many years. I did t-shirts designs, and then I did graphics, and then I performed, and then I got onto those press releases that went out to the entire country and further when John was leading the WinStar symposiums, and we were telling the world that Aspen was an environmental place. Now, he wrote that song for a woman that he loved very much in the early years, but later on, I believe he was singing to nature when he sang it again. So I live in a small art studio on the side of that park where development of the theater tent is proposed. I am a dance theater artist since I was 14 years old and danced in the Miami Ballet Company. So I love theater very much. And I thank Kent Reed publicly for starting that tent, and I thank Marissa Post, director of theater, Aspen Theater Company, who launched my international career, which I still have. I have written Paradise Now, my next environmental theater work. It started with the St. Petersburg Opera in March, and I have actually done my best to include the current incarnation of that theater company and sent that to them to do there as well, and they have not answered me. I spend a lot of time in that park. I walk there almost every day, and I have for many years, and the people who come there are very contemplative, and they want to commune with nature as inspired by John's words, and they come from all over the world. I've said that I'm a theater artist, and I have met many talented theater people there, including this summer. Thank you, Jed, for bringing them in. Designers that I may work with in the future, technical people, but all of them are from out of the area now. And I'm 70, and to tell you the truth, I'm quite weary of trying to keep development out of the John Denver Sanctuary. And I've done it several times. The planning department, not the current one, actually planned condos twice, like downtown Boston. So I'm here to say also that there are many theater artists in this community, including Broadway nominees and winners, who spend their lives to create that theater. And the current company, you have a tremendous asset in being able to use that. You have so much more than the rest of us have right now. And I hope that you can continue to use it in the way it is, and that the people of this community decide what we really want to do with that land. And I want to say to all of you out there, please come back to this room. We went through a terrible, terrible time as theater artists for what people claim to be health issues. We've all had a terrible time of that, and I want you to come back to this room. I don't know who sent you the message not to come in here anymore, but let's fill it up with us again, please. It is not true that we're not heard. Please come and be heard. Decisions are not being made behind our backs. This is a council that wants to hear from the public. We are the people who own that land. We are responsible for it. And these council members, I'm quite sure, and the staff that is here to give us what's best for everyone. We here in Aspen, Colorado are the only caretakers on earth of the only John Denver Sanctuary, and I hope that we put it into a trust. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, Sarah.
If I can't stay the whole meeting, I have to work tonight. I apologize.
Other members of the public that wish to speak this evening?
Hi, Tara Nelson.
Anything you sing will not be held
I was
against your
thinking
time.
of what I could segue into, and all I could think of was like the band The Cars, but then I didn't know a song by The Cars, so then I was like, shoot. But I'm here today to talk about traffic and Cemetery Lane, which was turned into a speedway. I've lived on Cemetery Lane now for 10 years and have 2 kids, and on their behalves, they're not here tonight, but they shared with me 2 stories that they had the other day, and I just wanted to bring it to your attention that the bike path is just as much a speedway as Cemetery Lane. The e-bike usage, of course, has increased. I've witnessed people who are short-term rental in the area all out on their e-bikes, which is great to go into town and, you know, they enunciate as we're walking down how they're on the bikes that they don't have to pedal. So I just want to bring to your attention that the e-bikes, hopefully we can do something with eliminating the throttle. Like, people need to pedal. It's just not a motorcycle thoroughfare. On the bike path, my 10-year-old son witnessed an accident between an e-bike cyclist and a regular cyclist that collided right in the driveway, so he had to share with me all the nuances of what he experienced, and we try to teach them trail etiquette, so when I'm biking with them, I keep them on one side of the road. We need to have additional signage there. There's no arrows. People are very oblivious. I mean, obvious directional arrows is needed. On the pathway, people just don't have courtesy anymore. It just has gone wayside. That being said, my kids bike to school. I trust them to take the trails, trying to teach them the proper way, and I don't want them on the roadways, so just need some added emphasis on that. And back to Cemetery Lane, the speedway, I was taking my son home the other night and I had a lady flashing her lights at me and honking at me as we're going up and over the hump. She decided to pass me and cut me off. And so I got her license plate and they called her. She admitted to driving and said that I was driving 10 miles an hour. The speed limit is 25. I was going 25. She then proceeded to pass the next car. So that being said, I have 2 kids in the car. I'm trying to teach them proper driving etiquette also. And I do believe that Cemetery Lane maybe needs to be reduced even to 20 because I think that can help in the residential area. So yeah, that's what I wanted to share with you. There's also a letter to the editor from a 7th grader, Jesse Kravitz, today that might be worth reading. Jesse is a student who my child goes to school with, and I'll leave you with the story of my other child. She had her first babysitting job across the street, which is Castle Creek Drive. She was going over to the Roush family. It was 4 o'clock. She was supposed to be there to watch Guthrie and Freya, and she can't get across the street. It's a brand new pedestrian painted pathway crosswalk along with a designated yellow sign, and there was no way she was gonna make it. She does not have the tenacity to go out and stop vehicles, so she went back in and got my husband, who went back to help her cross the street. But the humps on Cemetery Lane are actually causing people to almost increase after they get after the hump, so it doesn't necessarily slow it, unfortunately. So maybe perhaps another hump, I don't really know, but I do want you guys to just be aware that I did make a complaint with, I think, the engineering department, but just to be in the know, it's getting treacherous out there, so. Be safe. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Jim, the speed limit is 20 on in-city. The Cemetery Lane should be 20 miles an hour as well?
It should be.
Okay.
All streets in the city, other than 82 and Main Street, are 20 miles an hour.
Thanks. Other members of the public that wish to comment this evening?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council and staff, very much always for your time and for what you do for the community. Thank you so much. It's been 1 month since Robin and I, we'll reintroduce ourselves. Robin and I have Meridian Jewelers here in town for 20 years, and I've been a resident of Aspen since 1990, or of the valley, I should say, mostly of Aspen. And just wanted to sort of speak again about the Living Lab experiment that's happening on the block in front of Meridian. In the month that we first came here to speak with you all, we've had a lot of opportunity to continue engagement with many different members of the public in our store, customers, just folks coming by, people just using the street. I'm out there a lot observing what's happening, and it continues to be clear in our opinion that what's been designed there is it's just not working to accomplish the goals that I think you all had set forth for the experiment there. It just doesn't seem to be working. Everyone that we speak to is all for safety on our block, and we've come up with a lot of great ideas that we'd like to bring to everyone's attention that have been discussed, including a stop sign in front of Paradise Bakery, further reduction of the speed limit in the actual downtown core of Aspen, more four-way stop signs in the core, and just things to just make cars slow down and behave more appropriately in the core. We're certainly all for and behind that. But what does continue to linger is a feeling that leadership is being punitive towards people who choose to drive their cars into town to engage in the core. And people just feel that they're being made to feel not welcome in coming into the town in cars. And for better or worse, some members of the people who visit the core need to come, choose to come, whatever it may be, by cars, and they don't see that there's really a solution being presented for them as parking continues to be eliminated from the core. I don't know that you guys would say it's a goal to make it to be punitive towards cars, but when I look at some of the goals that are outlined on the city website regarding some of the goals for this experiment, I mean, one of them clearly is to reduce usage of fossil fuels, which would almost mean that this experiment is an attempt to see if people could be forced to walk or ride a bike rather than use a car. It's almost clearly listed as a goal. And I think my question is that really working? Is that really feasible? There are other places that have been turned into a complete pedestrian mall, and we could name a few that begin with V. And I guess a question that a lot of people have is that what we're moving towards here? And if that is, in fact, what we're moving towards, what's the solution for the folks that do need to drive? Aspen is always built on, I believe, the ability of people to engage in the core of Aspen in many different ways. I really hope that there can be a solution that's a little bit better for bikes, a little bit better for pedestrians, but doesn't continue to be as seemingly punitive to people who choose to engage the core in the way I mentioned. We've got 822 new signatures that I'd like to submit as part of the public record of people that feel the same way. And I know that this experiment was supposed to be something till the end of October. I'm not sure how that got picked as a date or whatever. I know that you guys have discussed maybe changing the duration of that, or I think specifically maybe it was just a few factors of it, but I think I'd like to specifically ask again for y'all to revisit whether maybe it could be ended sooner, mainly because what's been created there is just not working. Like if the feedback seemed to be 50-50 on whether it was actually working or not, I would say, okay, well, let's let it ride its course. But to me, and Robin and a lot of others, it seems like the feedback is so resoundingly negative to the way it's functioning that we'd like to specifically ask for it to be ended as soon as possible. Just don't know any other way to say it other than please end it. Please end the experiment early. And let's all work together to come up with a solution that actually does work for everyone in the core. Thank you all very much.
Last sidebar is, and it's just, of course, I don't think it works in general, but the fact that if in theory it were to work at all, it's only for a certain part of the day because so many people here, I mean, we're in a tourist town, that's just a fact. And so many people that are here in town as tourists are going to dinner. And at dinner, no one is really riding a bike. I mean, no one's coming up, coming from Snowmass to dinner or, different places throughout the valley on bikes at dinner time because people are not going to be riding their bikes at night because it's dangerous or they're dressed up or whatever the case may be. And so when it addresses so few months out of the year and so finite a time where it's even practical during the day, again, it just doesn't seem like a very rational solution to me.
And it just really does seem dangerous as we witness what's going on the street every day. It seems a little more chaotic, honestly, than it was before the experiment started. And I'm saying that just as someone who watches what's happening on that block every day. Thank you.
Thank you,
all.
guys.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the public that wish to make comment this evening? Any members in the room? I will look online and see if there's any attendees. Or not seeing any. I'll ask one more time. Are there any members of the public that are in the room that wish to make comment this evening?
Can I pose a question?
Not really. But if you want to get with me
You don't have to answer it.
over email, then definitely not. Thanks. But like I said, I'm happy to carry on this conversation with you.
Yeah.
I'm happy to. Council did address this issue again last week, and you're right. We were looking for the opportunity to make some amendments to it. A majority of this council did not support that. So as of right now, the schedule for it is to start having elements removed sometime in September. So that's where we are currently. With that, I'm going to close the citizen comments and petitions portion. Oh, wait, gentlemen, if you want to come on up and make some comments and updates for us, that would be fantastic.
All right. Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is John Spees, over in the Parks Department, Open Space and Natural Resource Manager. Alongside me, I have Brian Long, our Trails Manager. And we just wanted to give you 3 updates on some projects that are happening. I'll start off with 2 forestry-related topics. Unfortunately, David Kuhn, our forester, is out sick today, so I'm here in his place. First is, you may have noticed that some of the cottonwood trees around town are being defoliated, particularly visible starting in the west end. We have some on the east side of town and in Castle Creek. Or maybe you've received some comment on that. And I just wanted to say that we first noticed this towards the end of last summer. This year, I think we've seen an expansion of that defoliation. This is a native pest. It's the cottonwood leaf beetle. It does appear when trees are under stress, and I think that's what we're seeing this summer. It is not killing the trees. I think that's probably the most important message to take away tonight. The defoliation does obviously inhibit growth, but it is not killing the tree. In the next couple of weeks, the Parks Department is going to begin a mapping of the problem so we can sort of get our arms around how large of an issue it is this year, and then we would probably repeat that for the next several years so that we can understand why this is happening in Aspen. It's more common to happen on the plains, so on the other side of the mountains, and this is fairly unique to an alpine setting. So. Not a cause for major concern. The trees are not dying, but they are going through defoliation.
Question?
Thank you so much for bringing the report. I think I requested this at one of the last meetings. Is there any treatment for it? I mean, the watch and wait to me is a little nervous given how many of our pine trees are dying now throughout the entire valley. You know, you can see that, and these beetles seem to be very assertive once they have any foothold at all.
So we're still researching what the potential treatments are. There are treatments that exist for other types of beetles, and this would be more of the root injection style of treatment. At this point, we've engaged with the Colorado State Forest Service. We've engaged with some experts over at CSU who work particularly with this beetle. And for the most part, they have not seen this in other high altitude towns. And so this is a unique challenge that we're facing. I think the first step, probably the most prudent step, is understanding how many trees are being affected. So the city has 3,710 cottonwood trees within our inventory. Each one of those will be mapped and for their health.
Yeah, I definitely have noticed more on the Rio Grande Trail, actually heading up towards Smuggler Mobile Home Park and all those, and then down by the bridge over Mill Street, and as you mentioned, Castle Creek is really browning out.
Yeah. It's not unique to just Aspen. I think we're seeing this down in Carbondale, Basalt, other areas. But yeah, I think we've seen a pretty significant increase in the number of trees affected this summer. So we are digging in on it and, simultaneously looking at treatment options at the same time that we're engaging with the mapping.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Also forestry related and also beetle related. Wanted to give you a quick update on the Douglas fir beetle treatment. We came to you last winter with a proposal to work with Pitkin County, the Forest Service, ski company on a pheromone packet placement on Shadow Mountain and on the Ute. And that project was completed in May. We treated 177 acres. Which is less than what we had anticipated. What it really came down to is there's a lot of difficult and dangerous terrain up there, and so we weren't able to treat all the areas that we wanted. In general, we think the project went well, aside from the fact that it was difficult to access some of these areas. Currently, we are monitoring beetle populations that are pushed out of those zones, and that's the way that we can study the impact of our treatment. What you will see up on the hill is that there are trees that have already been affected, and most likely that happened several years ago, and now we're seeing them in that skeletonized or that red state. So that process is also ongoing. We're monitoring those beetle loads, and most likely we'll be back again next year to replace those packets and continue the treatment.
Yeah, I think that, when you look up Castle Creek, the whole side of Aspen Mountain that way is going.
Yeah.
If you are paying attention as you come up valley, the pines are going pretty quickly. And as you're saying, you don't really know that it's dead until 2 or 3 summers later when it doesn't turn green anymore. We have a lot going up the pass. I mean, I don't know if there's anything we really can do, or we're just about to lose our forest the way that Summit County did to the lodgepole pine beetle.
Yeah, the scale of this intervention was actually very large we worked with the Colorado State Forest Service on this, and they'd never worked on it at this scale. And so this is kind of an unprecedented attempt to keep the beetle at bay. And want to reiterate that we had a great partnership here with the county and the Forest Service and the ski company and ACES to help make this project happen. So,
Thank you.
with that, I'll turn it over to Brian, who's going to give you a little update on an upcoming trail project.
Thanks, John. Thank you, Mayor and members of council. I wanted to make you aware of an upcoming project on the ABC Trail, one of our very busy trails that leads from town out along 82. We'll be working on the Maroon Creek Bridge portion of that trail, on the highway bridge, where it's between 2 concrete walls. The trail deck there, we've been monitoring for several years now. It's suffering from what's called map cracking, and if that were to advance, it might start to be gravelly and compromised on that trail surface. So the plan we have is to install an epoxy overlay over that trail surface that'll encapsulate that concrete and protect it for a good number of years. This is similar to what's on Castle Creek Bridge that was placed on the new widened trail surface on Castle Creek Bridge. Unfortunately, due to CDOT's ongoing work in the area and some other safety constraints right in the Maroon Creek Bridge area, we're not going to be able to provide a detour in that site that's intuitive and easy. The detour for this route is going to be utilizing the Maroon Creek Road Corridor and the Tyhack Road Corridor and the Tyhack Bridge. And for for folks commuting to the ABC, for folks coming into town from Burlingame and from North 40, we just want to make all the outreach efforts we can, wanted to make council aware of what's happening now. This is going to be starting August 22nd, running hopefully just a week, but possibly till the 30th. And during that time, we're encouraging folks to use that detour up Tyhack and down Maroon, or to seek alternative transportation, the bus routes from Burlingame and in and out on the ABC, or if you've ever wanted to mountain bike your commute for a week and try that out utilizing the Burlingame and ABC connections to Rio Grande Trail, this is the time to try that out. But it will be impactful. It is a rather onerous detour, and you may hear about it. I wanted you to know why it's happening, and that there are safety reasons why we couldn't do a cleaner, more.
Are you posting really eye-catching notices on the actual trail for people to read and know about the upcoming closure?
Yes, those are going to be going up tomorrow. We'll have some very eye-catching, similar to in 2018 when we had a pretty big detour around the Castle Creek Bridge work. We'll have posters and signs on the trail that have maps and show folks where they are, and have some good wayfinding along the way and some breadcrumbs along the detour route. But information will be in the papers in the coming week and a half, and some web media outreach, and we'll have a lot of staff presence in the field while this is going on.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Brian.
With that, we'll close citizen comments and petitions. And I do want to say thank you to everybody that spoke this evening. As Sarah said, we do appreciate the input. It is how we do our job, so it is vital to hear from you, and we appreciate it. I promise you, we do listen. We try to be responsive, and we will continue. But please, keep coming to citizen comments if you'd like. We appreciate you. With that, we'll bring it down to council members' comments. I'm going to go ahead and start with the gentlemen that are online. Skippy?
I got no comments today.
Thank you. Ward?
Yeah, Tori, I want to thank everybody that came and talked to us about their feelings about the Living Lab, Pat, Seth, and I like the spirit of trying to work together to make something work. I think the goal, and Tara, mentions the cars and the balance. If there is a balance between pedestrian, bicycle, and car usage, it's elusive. We're trying to find something that makes the core more pedestrian and bicycle friendly, but we wind up is apparently causing confusion. It takes a long time for people to change their behaviors. I don't like to be called a social engineer, but I think that in essence is what we're trying to do, is get people to change behaviors. We get complaints about cars going too fast, bicycles going too fast, cars not obeying traffic laws, bicycles not obeying traffic laws. So sometimes you just want to pull your hair out and go, what is the solution? I had emails from a lady that was so upset with the way the Living Lab is going that she's going to go to Vail next year, and Vail has a policy where they ban cars downtown. I know that there are cities around the world that ban cars, over 240 of them, I think. They have a way of making it work, and I'm sure it's not without objection and opportunities or needs for people to adjust their behavior. I think it's better with fewer cars in town. People don't need to circle around for 30 minutes trying to find a parking spot. We have circulators, we have the downtowner, we have weave cycles people can use for free. They can park and walk a couple of blocks. If you go to a concert in the city, you're walking further than you'd have to walk. If you go to Cherry Creek Mall, you have to park and walk a long ways to get to the store of choice. So it's not a behavior that is uncommon to people, but I hear what everybody's saying, and it's frustrating to me as well, but we're trying to make a positive adjustment in town, and I don't know if it's going to work or not, but we hear you, and it causes us all to reflect on if we're doing something that is good. I want to make a comment about my comments last Tuesday night. We were trying to find a way to make our city council run more smoothly, and I made some comments that were out of line and hurtful. Rachel has been she's dedicated her life to Aspen Public Service, and I was disrespectful asking her to, I think, conform to my expectations, and that was totally wrong. And we have 5 people on council. They're all a little bit different, and we have to allow each other to be themselves. And I apologize to Rachel and to the public for calling her out and trying to limit her comments and make her conform to my expectations. So for that, I apologize. And it's been said many times, you can't unring a bell. I can't take the words back that I said. I can regret what I said and the impact it had. And so I just ask for forgiveness, and
Yeah.
at
Thanks,
that, I
Ward.
close.
That's more than enough. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Ward. John or Rachel, comments this evening?
I don't really have comments this evening, but I'll have a board report. That'll be longer.
Great.
I've got some comments.
John, go right ahead, please.
All right. In the latest environmental news, 50% of the U.S. is experiencing drought. Drought and irrigation demands in eastern Colorado are going to drain 2 reservoirs, killing fisheries and local economies dependent on the tourism from fishing and boating that the dollars bring to those communities. I've mentioned Salt Lake's dwindling water levels before. As it turns out, the same thing is currently happening to Lake Urmia in Iran. Also, quote, the water withdrawal for human use increased tremendously at the same time there was an extended drought. From the New York Times, there's still ongoing extreme drought in Mexico, with nearly 2/3 of all municipalities facing water shortages. Monterey has been the worst hit. Some neighborhoods have been without water for 75 days. In Texas, residents in Texas are being asked to conserve water as that drought persists. Australia's state environmental report was released recently, finding that that country's environment is in, quote, poor and deteriorating, unquote, conditions due to, quote, climate change, habitat loss, pollution, and resource extraction. On to floods. I think we all know about the extreme floods that hit Kentucky last week. Not as many are aware that St. Louis got hit by some fairly severe flooding. Earlier this week, Death Valley National Park received nearly an entire year's worth of rain in one morning, leading to stranding over 1,000 people, visitors and employees, and stranding 60 vehicles in debris flows. Earlier this week in Denver, we had downpours that and flash floods. Denver received nearly 2 inches of rain in only 26 minutes. And then only 2 days ago, Seoul, South Korea, had the heaviest rainfall in decades, 17 inches of rain in 24 hours. The amount Seoul normally receives in a whole summer month. They also, during that period, they received 5.4 inches in 1 hour, which broke an 80-year record. The good news is the Inflation Reduction Act passed earlier this week. And I'd like to point out the reason it probably passed was because instead of focusing on taxing the most egregious offenders of our pollution and climate laws, we're offering the U.S. government is offering incentives. I'm hoping that local governments can learn from that and hopefully figure out a way to offer incentives to inspire people to change their behavior, because we're not moving fast enough to avert the disaster that's coming our way. These rain events and flooding events are happening with increasing frequency. That's it.
Thanks, John. My comments this evening are brief. I wanted people to know that we are opening up the RFP process for proposals for the Rio Grande restaurant space. You can do it online, as a matter of fact. This is bidnetdirect.com. And we will be taking these proposals up until Friday the 16th. I believe that's at 2 o'clock, Friday the 16th. There is also a site visit and open house to discuss the property, and that is scheduled for August 23rd. If you want more information, please contact the city or just go on to our website for more information. That is my comments this evening. I don't see any agenda amendments. Are there city manager comments this evening?
Yes, Mr. Mayor and members of council, good evening. I want to just confirm you can hear me because I did not get to do an audio check.
Yeah,
We
we can hear you.
Thumbs up or something. Okay, thank you. A few quick things for you tonight. First is regarding the Living Lab, there's a few things that I've done this week that I wanted to make you aware of. First, I spent a significant amount of time out with Chief Ballantyne to have some fire department perspective and what their experiences are, as well as some of the field testing they have done to ensure building access with the configuration of the lab as one of the feedback points. I want to assure the community that there's not been a reduction in access, and Chief Ballantyne was able to confirm that during our conversations this week. I also have spoken with a number of residents. I've been out there almost every Saturday market for an hour or two observing, as well as what I'm doing throughout the week out there at least every other day. We have staff who are out there every day in some capacity watching the lab. And then I also have directed the police department to increase their presence in the area of the lab over the next 3 weeks. And they will be doing that as staffing permits on foot and on bike to gain those observations as well from their perspective in the data collection process. Are there any questions on that before I go on? Okay. And then next, just a friendly reminder that from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. there will be night work next week for a stormwater line crossing of Main Street at Monarch. Just to raise awareness for the community. There was a project briefing sent to council yesterday. Please reach out if you have any questions about that. And then I do want to just follow up on some of Mr. Turk's comments about me and about my office. I do want to let you know I have Mr. Turk's contact information. I last spoke to him on June 3rd regarding his complaint about a staff member. This is the first time I've heard any concerns about the lab from him tonight. So I'm happy to share with you, Mayor Tory, that contact information. But as well, we're happy to follow up on the staff end about the lab itself. Thank you.
Thank you.
Board reports. Start off with Rachel.
Yeah, thank you. I was in Rangeley not long ago on the 29th and 28th of this month of July. And it was the Club 20 Policy Committee meetings. As we've talked about before, there's been a little bit more consolidation around the issues that are interrelated, particularly public lands, natural resources, and water committee, also ag committee, because they're also interrelated. And, you know, it was a really very powerful meeting. We had the state forester, Matt McCombs, there to talk about different ways to pursue mitigation dollars for fire fuel loading in advance of a fire. A lot of discussion about a new website that's called Wildfire Ready Watersheds, and they're starting to do tremendous amount of evaluation of how to be ready for a wildfire and how to respond after it has occurred. It was very interesting to see that the town of Superior, where they've had the large, almost urban fire, are now using carbon filters to be able to clean their water quality enough. And the post impacts of wildfire on water is very serious. Both the way that the soils become hydrophobic and will no longer absorb water, increased flooding, increased issues of debris flow. Pardon me. But really, the most interesting was the discussing of the water issues as we are facing them now on the Colorado River and the federal actions that are potentially imminent. We heard from Becky Mitchell with the Colorado Water Conservation Board first about her negotiations. The Bureau of Reclamation has probably about 30 days ago told all of the Colorado water users that if they did not cut back by 2 to 4 million acre feet within the next 60 days, the feds would take control of the system and make their own decisions about how to prop up Lake Powell. Propping up Lake Powell is critical to the federal government because of the power generation. It's electricity for probably 10, 20 million homes come from Lake Powell. Alternate energy sources are not yet really identified and will probably be at a quite high cost to replace those services. The scary part is we heard as a second speaker from Greg Walsher, and he's a former Club 20 director and also served under Bill Owens as the Director of Natural Resources for a number of years. So he's very well familiar with these issues, but not being in office was able to speak with perhaps greater candor than the state official. And he was very, very concerned that what we're really going to see is the feds taking Colorado's water, which we have in our reservoirs, to solve those problems. And how can or should Colorado begin to fight back immediately? It's really emphasized that Colorado cuts back its water use every year based on the snowfall. We can't use more than what drops down. And the issue, so we're using far less than what is, quote, our entitlement under the compact. But the lower basin states, they get their water from reservoirs, and they just open those floodgates, often taking far more than their allotted share. And that's been going on for a good number of years. Lake Powell has always been considered the savings account for assuring that the upper basin states, Wyoming, Utah, and Colorado, are sending enough water downstream each year to Lee Ferry. But as Greg Walsher described it, the releases from Blue Mesa last year were literally stealing Colorado's water that would have been there for future years, was part of our share, and that while Rudi is not part of the CRISPR system, the Colorado River Reservoir Active System, it is a Bureau of Reclamation project, and there's a great deal of concern about how much of what we think of as our banked water or water for the winter releases for the fish or how well they will fill next spring may well be released by the feds. They're releasing much more out of Flaming Gorge this year, but there's just a real concern about whether the law of the river, first in line, first in time, and the seniority of water rights system is going to be upset. Kind of concurrently with this, we have a nice federal program that both Senator Hickenlooper and Bennett have been advancing, which will assist with paying farmers to fallow their fields so that more water can be released. And that's an interesting kind of short-term measure. A lot of farmers believe it's the next step to buy and dry. And a lot of fields, you really can't keep them out of production very long without kind of losing their production value. You can't just bring a farm back, and certainly on the stone fruits and things like this, you can't fallow them for a year. But the real concern is that the Front Range is not going to be cutting back their crops, and they're not going to be fallowing the row crops and the beet crops and the onions and everything on the Front Range, and the Trans Mountain diversions will continue. So it's just the west slope that's in the rubber band pull of half of our water going to the Front Range, the other half needing to be sent down to Lake Powell. So we're really in a bit of a dilemma, and I'm quite concerned about it, but I'm not entirely sure what we can do about it. But we are facing the same drought situation that the rest of the world is. It's not as pronounced here, and when you look around, you see a lot of greenery. But again, when our cottonwoods are being attacked by bugs that can thrive because of the drought and the weakness of the trees, and the wildfire danger that really does surround us. I'll close with one last comment, and it's because we just had this great rain, and you feel great when you see a lot of great rain, and things feel really nice and fresh this morning. But in fact, in Colorado, 75% of all the participation evaporates. And it doesn't necessarily reach the rivers, and that's the truth from our snowfall and snowpack, and straight from the mouth of the state meteorologist. So it really is dry out there. Please be very careful about wildfire danger, and think about conserving. The city is looking at long-range plans for a reservoir towards Woody Creek, but as it is now, we have maybe a 3.5, 4 day reservoir at best. We are a surface flow community. It depends on the flows on Castle and Maroon and a little bit of well water. So thank you all for your time. I greatly appreciate it.
Thanks, Rachel. Any other board report?
No, that's really it. Again, we talked to Energy Committee. There's a lot of work on the just transition for communities that used to be fossil fuel producing communities and whose employment base and property tax base heavily depends on those plants. So we're looking towards how can you ease towards that new solar future. I do think that there's been a far greater buy-in and benefit potential being offered to communities from moving towards a solar or wind power type of generations. Thank you.
Other board reports this evening?
No board reports.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. That'll bring us down to our consent calendar. The consent calendar tonight is resolution number 95, the old Powerhouse Preservation Design Services Change Order. Resolution number 97, Old Powerhouse Preservation and Construction Manager as Advisor Ad Service. Resolution 100, calling for and establishing the date for coordinated election and authorizing the city clerk to execute the IGA with Pitkin County, and the draft minutes of July 26, 2022. I have really brief questions regarding the first two, so the old Powerhouse designs. Did anybody want anything else pulled?
No, thank you.
Nope. All right.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Evan Fletcher with the Asset Department.
Thanks, Evan. The question is not specific to the Powerhouse, but really is about all of our facilities. I think as we moved over here to our new city hall, it was identified that we had perhaps 6,000 square feet of need for office space. To bring in-house those departments that were still in leased space. And I'm just wondering, when we get through Powerhouse preservation and renovation for city offices, should that capacity bring us all in-house and out of outside leased spaces? And I see Sarah might actually.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to take that question.
Thank you.
That's really outside the scope of what Evan's
Yep.
materials are for tonight. That is the intention right now. There is really no leased space. There is a small amount of leased storage space that exists, but the intention is to continue the consolidation of staff and making it that the Powerhouse is the closest extension of the campus, the governmental civic plaza area. When council chose to make the armory for civic and public use and remove the municipal business offices out of there, this was the alternative that council selected and passed in its resolution with the intent of placing information technology, the asset department, special events, and the transportation department in the old Powerhouse, along with requesting us to figure out how to make accommodation to include more activation of the lawn area adjacent to the building for the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to add anything? Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. With that, I could take a motion for consent calendar this evening.
I would make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, could we have a roll call vote for consent calendar this evening?
Counselor Doyle,
Yes.
Counselor Howenstein,
Yes.
Counselor Mesereau,
Yes.
Counselor Richards,
Yes.
Mayor Tory.
Yes, thank you.
I'll be back in just a second.
Alrighty. No notice of call-ups this evening or first readings of ordinances, but we do have public hearing. This is ordinance number 15, 470 Rio Grande Place, known as Theater Aspen, minor amendment to Plan Development Project Review Approval. Rachel stepped out of the room for just a moment, so as we get computers connected. Yeah, but apparently it didn't work. Just kidding, Alan. Just kidding, Alan. Can somebody,
The back door. There's no way to get into the building.
we're gonna take care of that now. Sorry
to be
about that.
late. I apologize.
You're not, actually.
Could you move us? up?
No, you had,
Right on time.
I think Jed would call a dramatic timed entrance.
Rachel just stepped out.
It's very nice to be booked for a second night.
It's nice to see you again.
Command performance.
It's a completely different set. I've got other songs.
Shoot me an email if that happens.
It went back to where it was.
All right. Amy, would you like to introduce this item?
Yes, please. Amy Simon, Planning Director. I'm here with Jed Bernstein from Theater Aspen and Alan Richmond, their representative. Unlike last night's work session, we are here strictly to talk about the existing facility and a request for a plan development amendment to allow the roof membrane over the auditorium space of the theater you see in this picture to stay up year-round. From 2011, there's a condition of approval that it needs to come down seasonally. This is second reading of an ordinance to allow a change to leave it in place. At the discussion at the last meeting, we provided additional information in the memo. For instance, there were questions about some of the trailers and structures that are behind the tent, a question about how those came to be, and they actually were part of the 2011 approval, and we saw them at our site visit yesterday. They provide back-of-house services that cannot be accommodated in the tent, but they were approved. I think the second question was some explanation of Theater Aspen's representation that it's costing them $50,000 a year to take this membrane up and down. So we did provide some figures in your memo. And then there was also a question about if this roof will be in place for more of the year, are there other uses that could be accommodated, which I think Jed may speak to more. It's still not a conditioned space. It might allow some additional use by the school district or other groups like that to bleed slightly into the shoulders that surround their typical season. At any rate, just going through these slides quickly, you saw these last time. A view of the roof being taken off of the structure, a view of the tent as it looks in winter now, where you just see the skeleton over the auditorium with no roof in place, and a proposal for how it would look if this was left up year-round. And you can see that of all times of year, the visual impact isn't so significant in the winter when it fits into this sort of snowy setting. Staff is recommending approval. These are the conditions that we suggested the last time. Primarily, we want to make sure that with the tent roof up in the snow, that it's safe around the structure and that any kind of damage or snow shedding that might happen is the responsibility of the theater. We had also suggested that if the time comes that the membrane, that the tent fabric is replaced, that there be a discussion by City Council about appropriate coloring, because perhaps there's something that's better for a year-round installation. So with that, we do recommend approval. I can answer questions, or the applicant if you have them.
Council members, questions?
No.
No, I really don't.
Okay, seeing no questions. This is a public hearing, so I'm going to go ahead and open this up to the public for public comment. Are there any members of the public that wish to comment this evening on ordinance number 15? Sarah, if you'd like to, you're going to have to come on up to the side
Microphone.
right here,
I'll make sure the light's on.
Where would you like me to?
right at the end
Microphone right here so you can.
of the dais here.
Like I said, I can't sit. My knees are really
Just
sprained.
pull that up to
I
you. And,
apologize.
no problem.
You know, I didn't mention before, I have really serious concerns about the runoff. And digging into the ground there so close. I've worked with the water board folks down in Denver many times on that river. I know that we're still dealing with high levels of petroleum coming off the streets in Aspen and running into the river, and that if those ponds are tested at a high runoff, I tell folks in the park not to take their dogs and children in there. So we have real concerns. We're also, not only are we the keepers of John Denver Sanctuary, but we're at the top of the watershed. So I've been working, do you remember, Tori, some time ago when the Parks Department was misguided and they brought in cheap water balls from, the tree balls from Denver, and that all that pesticide was leaking into the water. It was the first time we leaked pesticides. So I have serious concerns about the environmental impact. I mean, I say again, I would love to have a space if it were green and it
Sarah,
were
this is just about whether the current tent can stay up all winter or not. It's not about any
It's
new
both.
facilities.
I really do
Okay.
not vote for all year because it's the green part of the heart of town, and there's still beaver. I had some altercations with the Parks Department over the beaver, trying to understand that. The animals, they center the town when they're here, and a full-time space would stop that. And emitting full-time EMFs into that space will stop. I've watched the wildlife decrease over the last 40 years. It's not just because I love animals, it's because they balance nature. And that's what John talked about, So I'm not for all year. And, that's not a not in my backyard thing because I have to rent in the winter to keep my apartment. And you know that. And I leave to go to work where I can work. But I'm here in the summers, and I living there a long time, I do not recommend. I've seen the wildlife drop off. And I've seen the coyotes come back in packs because the other wildlife has dropped off. And so it's more dangerous for people with dogs when the coyotes come in the packs that I had never seen in 40 years that I've seen in the last couple of winters. So thank you for listening. So I have concerns that are environmental. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public that wish to speak on ordinance number 15 this evening? All right, I will close the public comment portion of this hearing and bring it back to council table. Is there any response to a change in the runoff of, if the roof stays up? Sarah's concern, basically, is really just about snow loading on the roof and shedding off. When we did our site visit yesterday, you've got 3.5 out of 4 sides are concrete pavers around the edges, storage in the back. It's really just maybe the north side that has some abutment to vegetation.
That's true.
Okay.
Alan had his hand up to answer you.
Sort of.
Yeah, my comment wasn't about the runoff. It was about Sarah's comment about the year-round use. And if you look at condition 2 that staff has recommended and that we represented in the application, keeping the tent up year-round is not a request to turn this into a year-round use. We're limited by the terms of the prior approval, and we're very comfortable maintaining that. So this is not a change to the operation plan at all.
Thank you. With that, if there's no further questions or comments,
Mr. Mayor, I have looked at this, and I do believe it makes more sense to leave the structure up during the winter rather than bringing it down and putting it back up each year. It's a really challenging thing to measure environmental impacts. You know, we talk about, oh, let's not have a snow melt driveway, but then the car driving up the truck to plow it is coming from Rifle or Glenwood. So it's always a matter of balancing these sort of things, and it looks like a lot of work and a lot of time and expense to take that tent down and put it back up. On a personal note, I live nearby at the Hunter Creek area, and I've always thought it looks pretty ugly in the winter. You know, it just looks like something is being demolished or was torn down halfway. And so, you know, I believe in the evolution that has occurred from the very first Kent Reed tent down there, when the area was known simply as the Art Park and had not yet become a John Denver sanctuary, which was due to his untimely death and very unfortunate. But it's very much a shared use type of facility and area for our community. You know, I've heard some Ruggerfuss games that seem to break the tranquility a little bit down there, and we all just kind of work it out and work together. So I will make a motion to approve ordinance number 15, series of 2022, the Rio Grande Place Theater Aspen minor amendment to a planned development project review approval.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I'm going to share some of my comments from last time. When this came to me on council before, it was about the framework staying up. At that time, I voted against the framework being allowed to stay up. I don't see much difference between this roof and that framework being up. There are some cost savings to you. I do want the opportunity to see this for a year, of course, and just see if there is any negative impacts, negative effects. Jim, this is an amendment to a minor amendment to their project. It can be revisited in future.
Absolutely. It can be revisited. You're still the owners of the property. They still have leases, and there's an approval here that you can certainly amend later.
But wouldn't this action run with the prior approval, and would they need to bring it back to us, or we would be breaking the terms of our approval, or are they subject to council changing their mind? I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad idea or not. I just want to make sure it's not.
No, I understand the question, and I would understand the applicant's question about the council moving forward with that kind of an amendment, but I have not reviewed the lease itself recently. I hadn't done that. I know that there's a 10-year lease.
10-year lease, yes. 1 year into a 10-year lease. The one thing I would say, I believe in 2011, there was a condition then that you wanted a revisit of a decision in a year. So it's not as if you haven't done that before.
Yeah.
I believe, though, that there will be some investment made to purchase the structural reinforcement to allow the tent roof to stay up year-round. So it might be burdensome to the applicant to be reconsidering it, but they can speak to that.
It's a legitimate point that's being raised here, and you know, the way to do this, Tori, would be to put a condition in the ordinance that would allow that revisiting to make sure that it was clear, as was done in 2011, if that is the desire of the council. But looking back without going through the lease itself and various terms that are associated with that, I think in order for you to clearly give yourself that authority to revisit, it should be part of the approval with an amendment to the ordinance, which you certainly can do. Under our charter, you can amend the proposed ordinance here. I don't see it as a retained right here and now. So you can, can revisit ordinances, but you do have issues with having individual applicants rely on the substance.
And make expenditures based on
Make
that.
expenditure, that would be a detrimental reliance. You can revisit ordinances, however, but under this circumstance, I think you could raise a question about detrimental reliance if there was significant expenditures on it. So I'm apologizing for thinking out loud here, but the proper way to give yourself the right to do what you're requesting would be propose an amendment to.
And I don't foresee any issues with this. I don't think it's going to have any negative impacts. But again, in the process that this has been through, I don't know. I don't know that. So there's two ways to do this. We can, if council is comfortable with it and supportive, we can move through this and vote on it. Or if council feels the same as myself, which wants to make sure that we're not seeing something. But I've got Ward with a comment. Ward, we're in a comment portion of a motion and a second. Your comments?
Well, I don't see any detrimental effect. I think I had a question that was brought up by your comments and the investment that Theater Aspen is making to make the structural engineering changes to make the roof stay up over the winter. So I'm just curious what the expense of those improvements for structure are.
Well, there will be expenditure on some heating because we want to make sure the snow melt does not get out of control. There will be expenditure in potential groundskeeping and snow removal, depending on the weight of the snow, et cetera. And then there are side panels that help to support the roof in the off-season, and they would have installation costs. I think we own the panels at this point, but that would be installation and then deinstallation costs. So without, this was not an issue that I was anticipating today, so I can't tell you exactly what the $25,000 twice a year would change to with this condition, but it would not change to zero. I mean, there would still be some expense.
Thanks, Jed. No, I don't have any objections to this.
Thanks, Ward. Any thoughts?
Well, Jed's most recent comment about it being heated all winter when there's nobody in it raises my eyebrows.
Understand?
Yeah. Can you clarify, is that heating the whole tent, or is that heating a heat tank?
No, it's just to make sure, because of the conditions that you see in front of you, where we have a responsibility if there are accidents and things like that, we have to do what we can to make sure that the snow does not pile up and get out of control. And we've been exploring, snow removal systems or companies, et cetera, and because we want to be good custodians of this, so.
I'm okay with the ordinance as it's come forward to us. I am not as concerned. If we were going to change it and modify it, I would suggest more of a 2-year run than just a 1-year run, potentially to help offset some of the cost or expense if it ends up at the end of 2 years being reversed. But I think a 1 year may or may not really show enough, and it, again, would help ameliorate some of the cost if you're going to change it. But I'm okay with it the way it is. I would support this.
I'll agree with what Rachel said. I would like to know at the end of a year or two, whatever we come up with, to know how much energy is being used to keep the snow from collapsing the roof. Greenhouse gases are a huge part of this council's concern.
So I think I was the maker of the motion. I could propose, and with Jim's guidance, my own amendment. I'd like to amend the motion I had made to include a 2-year, to make a 2-year review necessary for this ordinance to continue in effect for the entire length of the lease. Does that do it?
I understand.
I mean, if you have suggested language, Jim, I'd love that, but.
I would suggest if you wish to place something in there that you give us a few minutes to,
Think about how to do it?
to wordsmith it.
Okay, I will withdraw my amendment. I will withdraw the original motion, if that's okay with the seconder. And then we could take a 3-minute, 5-minute recess.
Well, I would suggest that you move on to the next matter and give us a few minutes to see
Work
if
on
we can
that.
come up with some language.
I just think we might need you on the next matter, too.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised about that, but I can at least give it some thought, and if we take a break after then, come up with something. I'm afraid to do it and try to do it in just a 2-minute break, but
I've got the ordinance up on the screen and half a sentence written if you want to help me finish it.
Jim, if I could recommend just a 5-minute pause, I think we can get there.
Let's take a 5-minute recess.
you can do that, that's fine.
First, I want to talk to the applicants. Again, I don't foresee any issues or difficulties, but if there are, and we don't have any recourse or ability to say, hey, this doesn't work, it's not working, I'm a little concerned. That's all.
I think, though, in fairness, it would be helpful to understand on what basis is it being reviewed? You know, is it that whoever's on the council in 2 years doesn't agree that aesthetically it looks different? Or is it whoever's on the council in 2 years thinks that X percentage of energy usage is too high or not too high?
Right.
You know, it's hard to imagine this without it being very precise.
Yeah.
You know, I think working with Amy and her team, we have tried to address danger, which is of course number one, absolutely. And we've tried to address aesthetics, which is a distant second, you know. And it feels like a fairly benign matter.
It feels like it.
Yeah.
Philip?
Mayor Tory, Council, thank you. Philip Sapino, Community Development Director. If I can just take a moment to address the comment about the potential for some thresholds or standards. This is a discretionary review and approval or not by council. And so I think with Jim's support, I would suggest that it is absolutely in council's sort of purview to establish some criteria by which you may be concerned or not about the effect of this approval that you'd be granting tonight. And we can bake that into the language here. So, you know, if council likes the language that staff develops with respect to some thresholds around what I'm hearing, which is aesthetics, life safety, and greenhouse gas emissions, I think we can write that into the approval fairly simply in a way that will provide some clarity to Theater Aspen with respect to where the standards are and some comfort to council about being able to move forward.
You know, I don't want to make this more confusing, but you're on city electric, right? And if you're using electric heat, we're producing that power via hydropower, solar, and wind. And it's not fossil fuels unless you're using a propane tank to do the heating, and you're not going to do that because you could burn it up. So, you know, I can see trying to measure this. We are going into building IQ for all sorts of other buildings. And so I can see wanting to have some tracking of how much energy it ends up using. I'm sure they're going to want to minimize that to minimize the costs, you know. But they are on city electric.
So environmental concerns about, you know, energy usage itself is, that it was not.
It's somewhat negated. It's not entirely.
And that was not part of why I had concerns about it. Again, I don't know, safety is obviously number one. So I just feel the opportunity here that we need to make sure this is okay, that it does go forward correctly, And I don't know what could come up, so that's my concern. If my fellow council members don't share that, we can do this approval right now as is, or with your consent, not having environmental be part of this criteria and review in 2 years, we can move forward with other opportunities for council to just make sure that it is going the way it was planned.
Well, fair enough. I do appreciate Rachel pointing out that the energy used will not be fossil fuels burned. But it does trouble me that we're going to be heating an unused space just to make sure we don't have to do that right now with the roof off. We don't have to use any energy to melt the snow. That said, I'll go along with council.
All right, thanks. Ward, do you have comment?
Yeah, I don't think a music tent is heated in the winter. I think a lot will depend on the pitch of the roof and the material used for the snow to slide off. I'm not an engineer. I don't know what materials are being used, but that's just an observation that the music tent stays up all, and it's probably 20 years old now that it's stayed up all winter.
Thanks, Ward. You know, maybe it's possible just to include this check-in, to include a check-in in 2 years, because I know the people across the table, and if there were any issues, you'd be sharing in them.
Of course.
They wouldn't be just issues for the citizens of Aspen. You're going to be part of that. So, you know, all I'm really looking for is the opportunity for a check-in. If that's more amenable for you, I'm fine with that. Just the opportunity for review, a conversation in 2 years if it's necessary. Jim?
Well, I think you can certainly put that in, and Amy was working toward that, just to say that applicant shall,
She's got a good one there.
yeah.
For the public who can't read that too far away, we're looking at language that says, this approval shall be reviewed by City Council by May 2024 after 2 complete winter seasons to discuss any reasonable mitigation of energy use or stormwater impacts resulting from the roof remaining in place.
But given Tori's comment a second ago, the question I think the applicant would have would be,
Do we want to get rid of the mitigation language in there?
well, what does review mean? And are you asking for an opportunity to amend or terminate the ordinance? And what it sounded like you wanted was just a report.
I think a conversation with them is plenty. I don't think council needs the control because they're partners at this. So if there is an issue, you know, whether it's animals using the tent in the winter or
Area
people
homeless.
using the tent in the winter, if they're going to be sharing this. So really just to have the conversation, so the connect base is, I think is plenty for me. I just think the opportunity to have that conversation is what's important.
I added a phrase in there that you would discuss advisory measures for reasonable mitigation, if you wanted to leave it as just a discussion.
Yeah, see, that's the distinction I was trying to raise, is that if it's a review, then you're contemplating some action versus asking the applicant to appear before council and provide a report on the status and everything she outlined. I think you understand that distinction, right?
I mean, the sense I'm getting from you, Mr. Mayor, is we should come back in the spring of '24, you know, and say, gee, this worked out great, or we had these 3 problems, this is what we think we should do about it, and we would be in discussion presumably with Amy or all the appropriate city agencies right away anyway. I mean, if there's animal damage, whatever. So I don't know that we have to name you know, what the mitigation is about. It's to say, we have an obligation to come back to you and say, how is this working out, this new condition?
I agree. Amy, what we're saying is we don't need the specificity of the energy use, perhaps.
I'm just leaving a breadcrumb trail so that when 2024 comes up, we know what we were concerned with at the moment.
Okay. And it's just the opportunity to check back in with you.
Yeah, and if I may, the language in there about reasonable mitigation of some things, again, is more a sort of hint to our future selves about what the nature of the conversation was today. It doesn't restrict or bind the conversation in any way.
Okay. All right. Is that amenable? Okay, thank
Do
you.
you want me to read this sentence? Because I've been writing while you're talking, just to make sure we're good.
Sure, why don't you?
This approval shall be reviewed by City Council by May 2024 after 2 complete winter seasons to discuss any advisory measures for reasonable mitigation of energy use, safety concerns, stormwater, or other impacts resulting from the roof remaining in place year-round.
I would make a motion to approve ordinance number 15 as amended with the addition of item number 6.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Yeah. I had a discussion point, but it just slipped away.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion at this time? Seeing none, can we have a roll call vote for ordinance number 15? You okay?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, Jed, you have to realize that as we sit at the table, any number of things come back to us, and we're like, well, why didn't they put in this condition, or why can't we change it now? And I think this is really more of about a safeguard for future councils, and that's all.
I'm good.
Okay, I just wanted to say, I mean, we just see it too often when you're like, how did they leave this out, or why didn't they think of that? And it's old New York Times print documents that we're all living with from 20 years ago. So thank you for your consideration.
Of course.
Counselor Doyle,
Yes.
Counselor Howenstein,
Yes.
Counselor Mazzaro,
Yes.
Counselor Richards,
Yes.
Mayor Tory.
I'm a yes. Thank you, guys.
Thank you all very much.
Good to see you again.
I can be here tomorrow.
But we were off.
Come on by.
That'll bring us down to our next item, which is the action item tonight, resolution number 96. This is 516 East Hyman Avenue Growth Management Review. Yeah, that.
Yeah, I saw that last night. Well, while we're waiting, Sarah could have sung us another song.
What?
While we were waiting, Sarah could have sung us another John Denver song.
I missed my chance to embarrass her. It's Amy Simon's birthday today, but she's already gone, so we can't sing to her either.
All right. We are ready for you to introduce this item when you are.
Thanks, Mayor Tory and Council. Again, Philip Sapino, Community Development Director. We're joined by Garrett Larimer, he's the Senior Planner in Community Development. If you'll bear with me for just a moment, I didn't realize I got kicked out of the Zoom meeting and I need to be back in to share my screen.
Technology.
And Joseph, if you're out there, can you make me a presenter?
Oh, good. We're glad you came back, Amy. We wanted the opportunity to wish you a very happy birthday.
Well, while I'm waiting for presentation permissions from the meeting administrator, I'll just introduce the item. So this is a resolution number 96, series of 2022. It has a very complicated title. In your packet, it's a resolution amendment to a growth management development order, a change in use and an expansion of commercial development review. That sounds like a lot. We're talking about 500 square feet of existing commercial on 516 East Hyman Avenue, which is a mixed-use building in the commercial core, and an affordable housing unit, which is presently located in that building. The proposal is to essentially move that affordable housing unit into a two-bedroom free market condo, currently free market condo, at 1235 East Cooper Avenue, which is an existing multifamily building, and concurrently to deed restrict and create affordable housing credits from the 7 other units in that free market condo building. So to put it in the simplest terms possible, we'd like to magically create 7 affordable housing units out of 1 existing affordable housing unit. As you can imagine, when we were approached a couple weeks ago by the applicant and the Aspen School District, this was an exciting discussion to have, and to use a phrase that Sarah Ott likes to use a lot, we felt like this was work worth doing. We worked closely with the city attorney's office to respond to this particular land use application with all diligent speed in recognition of the school district's statements about their desire to house teachers prior to the start of the 22-23 school year. So with that in mind, Mayor, if I can share my screen.
Please do.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing.
You can do it. Oh, come on. So the applicant is Mark Hunt M Development. They own, again, 1235 East Cooper. The application was presented in conjunction with the Aspen School District. In the land use code, the community development director is permitted to combine different levels of review: administrative, P&Z, HPC, council. They can be combined with the permission of the applicant and at the direction of the community development director to make processes more efficient, more expedient, and that's what we've done here. The resolution would amend, this is an amended version of a land use application that was previously submitted by the applicant to deed restrict the units at 1235 East Cooper. So we've been having these discussions on and off for a couple of years with the applicant about this property. This addresses the Aspen School District's affordable housing needs in a pretty short time frame with existing development. It clarifies deed restriction requirements for the unit presently at 516 East Hopkins. Through our investigations, we learned that that is not a permanent deed restriction, and these actions would make that a permanent deed restriction. Some details about the resolution. Again, it would amend the deed restriction by relocating it from 516 to 1235. That would require the change in use. So because there's this 400 square feet that exists in 516 East Hyman, the deed restriction's being amended and the unit is being relocated, but that square footage isn't going away. So it by default has to go through a change in use review process per the standards in the land use code to revert to or be converted to a commercial use. And there's language in the resolution tying the resolution to our administrative notice of approval. So as I noted in the memo, there are elements of this project that can be approved, and should council approve Resolution 96, will be approved administratively. And I would just note for council, some of those administrative powers and responsibilities are the direct response to some of the moratorium ordinances that you passed not more than a month ago. So this is that efficiency of affordable housing development process coming to fruition in pretty short order. And so again, Resolution 96 ties that administrative NOA and council's actions tonight together to make a very sort of clean process. And staff believes that we have come up with the legal department's assistance with a structure for those two documents that creates really strong backstops for the community with respect to the approval of the amendment of the deed restriction, the creation of the affordable housing credits, and the actual deed restriction of the existing free market condos. So if for any reason the parties involved decide not to completely execute the deal, then the approvals granted in this resolution to move the deed restriction would be abandoned. The ability to generate the credits would be abandoned, right? So there's some guarantees for both sides about getting over the finish line together, so to speak. Again, this would create 7 new affordable housing units, 14 bedrooms, converting free market condos into affordable housing, so using our existing housing stock to make affordable housing. It would make the 516 deed restriction permanent, and it would ensure its ongoing occupancy. And so for those reasons, staff recommends approval of Resolution 96 tonight, and we're happy to have any discussion about its contents as council sees fit.
I have a couple questions.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. Philip, these are more general questions about the credits program as opposed to zooming in on this one. If a credit project comes online, the developer of that project can sell to employers to be able to rent to employees, and could sell to an employer to sell to their employees. Is that, are both paths possible?
Yes. So the credits program, the language in the land use code, is not prescriptive with respect to how a qualified occupant gets into a unit.
Okay.
And so we've seen recent credits projects. There's, I forget the address, Ted Guy's place on.
It doesn't matter the address, but you've seen a project.
On Main
and-
Street where all of the units were sold to employers who then put qualified occupants, qualified rental occupants into those units per APSHA guidelines.
I think that's 210 West Main.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so essentially, it doesn't matter how deep the pockets are of the employer, whereas if it was an employee trying to buy the unit, they would have to qualify. But an employer can buy and then be sure to rent or resell at the qualified level.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Do we know what the sales price of these credit units are to be, or X amount is the school district paying for it, and the X amount is, I guess, either potential tenants if they're sold the units, or through rent recovery?
The sale price, were they to be sold to the qualified purchaser, the sale price would be commensurate with the APSHA sale price. And if it's a rental, the rental rate would be commensurate with the APSHA rental rate for that category. And that's really the only thing that staff can speak to, and those are the standards in the APSHA guidelines in the land use code.
Yeah, I just wanted that on the record as we discuss this for the public's benefit as much as our own through our publications. So thank you very much for the background information on the credit program overall.
Thanks.
Skippy or Ward, questions, comments, suggestions?
Sure. No questions. This is awesome. I mean, this is one of the naturally occurring affordable units that we think of. It's right downtown. It's in the core. A number of years ago, ex-girlfriend of mine, rented one of these units on free market, and even at that time, it had become sort of unattainably naturally occurring. And these are the type of units we're losing. So to see an existing structure not need to be torn down, not need to go to the landfill, and continue its use of housing our workforce forever, I think is amazing. Really kudos to staff and for the applicant for bringing this forward. And I think this is a win-win project.
Great.
Ward?
My only comments are, this is a win-win. I would not like to see these leave the availability pool for teachers and administrators. I know this, we don't have control over it, but the school district at least up on Cemetery or Cinnamon Lane or wherever, that they had, if you had worked for the school district for X number of years, you can retain ownership after you retire and stay in the building, the home. I'd like to encourage us to be always available to working employees of the school district.
Comments?
Public comment, public.
Sure. I think this is a slam dunk. Just reading from the memo, the benefits to the community and APSHA system from this application are clear. The creation of 7 new deed-restricted units, 14 bedrooms in exchange for the relocation and expansion of an existing deed-restricted unit. This is a great deal for our community. And I'd like to give a shout out to Mark Hunt and thank him for bringing this forward to us.
Very nice. Ditto.
This is resolution number 96. I can take a motion.
Go for it, John.
That's a long one. Okay.
Do is say, move to approve resolution 96.
Okay. I move to approve resolution 96, series of 2022.
Second.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I would make the same thank you. I think it's a good project, and I think the school district will benefit greatly.
Can we have a roll call vote?
Counselor Doyle,
Yes.
Counselor Howenstein,
Thank you, Mark. Yes.
Counselor Mesereau,
Affirmative.
Counselor Richards,
Yes.
Mayor Tory.
Yes. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Council.
Thanks, Philip. Thanks, Garrett.
Mr. Mayor.
Oh, hold on a second. One of the applicants, people have a question of some sort.
Actually, if I could make a comment, would that be possible at this time?
Coming up and use the microphone.
I'll take care of that.
I'm sorry.
Thanks, man. Come on up, Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, city council, city team. This was a fantastic project, and thank you for that. I want to thank you. I'm Dave Baugh. I do live here. I am the superintendent of schools. This is hugely important. It is the second project we have done with Mark Hunt and MDev, and it's been hugely helpful for us. As I'm sure the community knows, school districts across the country lost a lot of teachers, a lot of staff. We've been very fortunate in our hiring. We are currently maxed out. With me is Ellen Woods Mitchell, and she has 4 teachers scheduled to go into this in the next couple of days. And so I just want to thank council and this group for supporting this effort. Between the work we did at Hallam and that we're going to do at 1, 2, 3, 5, this is a huge win for the teachers and for the children in the classrooms. And so, again, I just want to say thank you for your support of this project, and I'll be quiet now because superintendents talk too much.
But a quick question for you. We all were made aware of the teacher shortages that you were facing at the end of last year. Did you just say that you have successfully filled the positions that you were looking to fill?
Almost all of them, Mr. Mayor. We've been very aggressive in recruiting. We've been placing advertisements in Outside Magazine, for instance, as well as word of mouth. And we still have a few to go yet. Some of our really hard to fill positions. So if anyone knows any special educators looking for a job, we have some great units to put them in now, and as well as a very competitive pay package in the state of Colorado. I did want to answer your question or address some of the issues that I did hear. We no longer allow teachers to hang on to their homes once they part ways with the district. So the current policies and practices of the district are, if you're working and serving the children of the Aspen community, then we're doing the best we can to get you into a home. And as much as we appreciate the expertise of our retiree teachers, we just can't afford to do that anymore. So if we did in fact do that. So
I I was under the impression the school district had to always do rental cottages via state law as opposed to ownership units, but that's just an outsider's impression. It wasn't accurate.
I'm not sure if state law addresses that, but it certainly seems like good practice in this tight fiscal market.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Always good to see you. All right, we have an executive session, and Jim will tell us what the purpose is.
Mr. Mayor, staff is recommending that council go into executive session pursuant to CRS Section 246402-4A, purchase, acquisition, lease, transfer, sale of any real, personal, or other property interest. 4B, conference with the attorney for the local public body for the purposes of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions. And 4E, determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and instructing negotiators. The particular item for discussion tonight involved the lease, transfer, and acquisition of real property and property interest. However, due to market forces, negotiation strategies, and confidentiality demands of parties involved and necessitated by the subject of the legal advice which further disclosure would be a detriment to the city's strategic position in discussing the acquisition of real property, the exact properties cannot be disclosed. If council votes to go into executive session, the executive session will be recorded, and the recording will be maintained by the clerk for a period of not less than 90 days. Upon going into executive session, we will reconvene in council chambers downstairs. And I believe there's a separate link to a Zoom.
A second Zoom.
A second Zoom link has been provided to all council members. So
I would make a motion to go into executive session per the citations of our city attorney.
I'll second.
Second.
You're just digitally slow there, Skippy, you know? I mean, it's 1,000 miles or so, and it's, sorry, you're just missing them, buddy.
E for effort.
We have a motion and a second to go into executive session. Could we have a roll call vote for that, please?
Counselor Doyle?
Yes.
Counselor Howenstein?
Yes.
Counselor Mazzaro?
Yeah, just kidding, yes.
Counselor Richards?
Yes.
Mayor Tory?
Yes. All right. Thank you guys for coming out.
Thank you all.
See you on the flip side.
All right, grassroots, we are going into executive